Your bank account is about to take a hit you won't believe. This is the truth behind the $130,000 Reman and why you can no longer afford to fly a Lycoming. For nearly a century, these engines were the heart of American freedom. They were simple, tough, and built for the common man. But today, a factory overhaul costs more than a suburban house did 10 years ago. We are witnessing an extraordinary financial squeeze that is grounding thousands of airplanes and erasing the middle-class pilot from the sky. The big corporations want you to think this is just inflation, but there is a hidden, darker reason why the price of a simple four-cylinder engine has exploded into six figures. Something has changed in the way these machines are certified, and it is not about making them safer, it is about making them exclusive. Are the legendary engines we love being priced into extinction on purpose? Walk into any hangar built before the moon landing, and you'll find the same story written in steel and oil. The Lycoming 0320 and 0360 were not designed for the boardroom. They were built for the man with a socket set and a Saturday to spare. These engines did not just power airplanes, they powered a promise. Pull the cowl, and you are staring at a machine that is as honest as a farm tractor. Top access heads meant you could lift a cylinder off with the engine still bolted to the mount, swap rings or a piston, and be back in the air before lunch. No special tools, no factory secrets, just a parts manual and a willingness to get your hands dirty. Lycoming's engineers, back in those post-war years, knew their customer. They built these engines with a single camshaft, gear-driven, and easy to reach. The parts bin was a mechanic's dream. Over 70% of the pieces, including spark plugs, rods, and valves, fit across the whole 0320 and 0360 family. If you could fix a Cherokee, you could fix a Mooney, a Cessna, or anything else wearing the Lycoming badge. Service manuals from the 50s and 60s did not talk down to you. They assumed you would be pulling heads and checking clearances yourself, not shipping the engine across the country for a factory blessing. That is the way it was supposed to work. Field repair was not just possible, it was expected. Mechanics kept fleets flying out of a single crate of spares, and pilots trusted their engines because they understood them. The whole system ran on trust, and the kind of mechanical democracy that said anyone with enough grit could keep a plane in the sky. That is the world we are losing. One gold-plated bolt at a time. Factory whistles used to echo across the Susquehanna, calling out shifts for a workforce that could build more engines in a month than Lycoming now turns out in a year. Wartime contracts meant the assembly lines never cooled, and the numbers still stagger the mind. 55,000 engines for the war effort, stamped out with the same urgency as rifles and boots. By the time peace rolled in, the country was flush with surplus parts, and the know-how that trained 1,000 GI soldiers to fix a Jeep was suddenly pointed skyward. The post-war boom was not just a blip, it was a flood. 120,000 0320s and 0360s rolled out in the decades after VE Day, feeding a hunger for flight that stretched from Nebraska grass strips to the edges of the Alaskan bush. If you had a GI Bill and a dream, you could walk into a Piper dealer, sign a note, and join a brotherhood that believed the sky belonged to anybody willing to work for it. Pilot memoirs from the era read like love letters to a time when flying lessons cost less than a set of tires, and every town with a water tower had a flight school. Museum placards still show black and white photos of rows of engines stacked like cordwood, waiting to be bolted onto Cubs, Cherokees, and Cessnas. The abundance was not just in the parts, it was in the promise that flight could be as ordinary as driving a pickup. That era is over, but the memory of it lingers in every hangar that smells of old oil and ambition. Paperwork isn't a nuisance in aviation. It's the entire legal skeleton holding the airplane together. Every certified part, every overhaul, every blessed bolt that goes back on a Lycoming has to walk a regulatory gauntlet lined with signatures, batch numbers, and compliance tags. The law doesn't just ask for proof, it demands a chain of custody so tight you can barely fit a thumbprint between the links. The moment a mechanic cracks open a logbook, he's stepping into the world of 14 CFR Part 21, where the FAA stands as the landlord, charging rent on every hour a piston turns. The infamous Form 81303 is the gatekeeper. No certified part can move from shelf to airplane without this airworthiness tag, stamped and signed by someone with the right authority. It's not just a slip of paper, it's the ticket that lets a part legally exist on a flying machine. Miss a number, lose a batch record, and the whole engine is grounded until the paperwork is rebuilt from scratch. There is no shortcut. If a part isn't born in the right paperwork pathway, PMA, STC, or under the watchful eye of a certified repair station, it's a ghost. PMA means a manufacturer has spent months, sometimes years, proving to the FAA that their widget is a perfect twin to the original. STC is a separate mountain of engineering reports and test logs, all for the privilege of using a slightly different bolt or bracket. Even repair stations, those last refuges for the hands-on mechanic, live and die by their ability to issue 81303 tags on every job. All this compliance doesn't just slow things down, it stacks cost on cost before a wrench even touches the engine. The paperwork isn't optional, it's the toll booth at the entrance to the sky, and every owner pays whether they like it or not. Start with a plain steel bolt, hardware store cheap, nothing special. $100, maybe a little more if you are buying in bulk. But try to bolt that same part onto a certified Lycoming, and you are not just buying steel. You are buying engineering reports, test logs, and a ticket to the FAA paperwork circus. Suddenly, that $100 bolt is wearing a tuxedo and demanding a seat at the captain's table. First comes the engineering sign-off, $250 for someone to prove the bolt will not snap at 2,700 RPM. Next, prototype testing on a rig that costs more per hour than the plane itself, add $200. Then the quality management system, a bureaucratic beast that eats another $250 just to track every serial number from foundry to firewall. Every step is another toll booth, batch lot tracking, conformity inspection, the all-important 8130-3 tag. That is $100 for the inspection, $50 for the tag, $45 for the FAA review fee, and another $120 for a designated engineering representative to bless the paperwork with a signature. None of this makes the bolt any stronger. What it buys is permission. By the time the insurance premium, liability reserve, and packaging get stapled to the invoice, you are staring down a $1,500 bill for a part that started life as a $100 chunk of steel. The average multiplier is 12.5 times. And it is not just bolts. A magneto that sells for $120 on the open market explodes to $1,470 once it is certified. That is not a markup, it is a transformation. The FAA stands at the gate, hand out, charging rent on every turn of the wrench. The cost is not in the metal, it is in the privilege of keeping your airplane legal. Every line on the invoice is a reminder, you are not just buying parts, you are paying for a subscription to the sky. Start at the top of the invoice and the numbers tell their own story. Engine overhaul, $92,000, neat as a slap in the face. That is for the privilege of having your old 0360 torn down, measured, machined, and rebuilt by hands that now cost $50 an hour minimum. Next, certified accessories, 4 pieces, $5,250 each. Magnetos, prop hub, ignition harness. $21,000 gone before you have even bolted the thing back on the airplane. Labor, 800 shop hours, $40,000. That is not a typo. $40,000 just to keep the lights on, pay the rent, and make sure every wrench turn comes with a stack of compliance paperwork taller than the engine itself. The surcharges pile up like snowdrifts. There is the certified shop hours line, 30% of the bill. In the 90s, labor was a footnote. Now it is the main event. The invoice does not just charge for parts and work. It charges for every signature, every traceable batch, every time a mechanic has to stop and log a serial number for the FAA inspection parade. The baffle retainer, a hook of stamped steel, shows up at $1,052. You can buy the same part for under $9 if you do not care about paperwork. But if you want to stay legal, you pay the gold-plated bolt premium. Line after line, the numbers bleed together. There is a fee for FAA Form 8, 130-3 issuance, another for annual inspection paperwork, and a tool retention markup that feels like a ransom note. By the time you reach the grand total, $130,000, you are staring at a sum that could buy 3 airframes or a new truck for every mechanic in the shop. The old rule was that an overhaul should cost a third of the airplane's value. Now, the engine alone is worth more than the wings it is strapped to. There is no hidden gold in these numbers. Every dollar is spoken for by regulation, by insurance, by the landlord at the gate who calls himself the FAA. What used to be a handshake deal between a pilot and his mechanic is now a subscription to the sky, paid line by line with no end in sight. The invoice is not just a bill, it is a warning. The working man's airplane is one surcharge away from economic extinction. Walk into any honest shop these days and you'll hear the same story, only the numbers get uglier every year. The overhaul invoice isn't just a stack of parts and labor, it's a ransom note from a market locked down tighter than a hangar in January. Back in the day, you had 30, maybe 40 independent shops in the phone book, each one run by a mechanic who knew your name and could still get parts from 3 different suppliers. Now, 3 companies, Continental Aerospace Technologies, Aircraft Spruce, and Zivco Aeronautics, hold the keys to the kingdom. 73% of the certified engine overhaul market is in the hands of outfits big enough to have their own legal teams and compliance departments. It didn't happen overnight. The roll-up started around 2000 when Lycoming was folded into Continental's corporate umbrella. By 2008, Aircraft Spruce had swallowed the largest Lycoming parts distributor in the country, and Zivco moved in with PMA approvals that let them corner the replacement parts racket. The little shops, guys who could rebuild an O360 with a caliper, a torque wrench, and a handshake, started getting letters. Some were told their tooling was obsolete. Others lost access to the parts pipeline unless they signed up for factory partnership programs that came with a rulebook thicker than a propeller blade. The FAA 2023 Enhanced Traceability Rule was the nail in the coffin. Every bushing and every bolt had to be traceable to a single documented batch. If you didn't have the software, the audit trail, and the cash to float net 15 payment terms, you were out. The result was shuttered shops, one after another. The old-timers who kept the fleet running out of cinderblock garages found themselves boxed out by compliance costs and exclusive distribution deals. A&P mechanics who once had a fighting chance now have to call a corporate call center just to price a gasket. The market isn't just thin, it is captive. With 3 giants holding the market, there is no reason for prices to come down. If you want a certified overhaul, you pay what they say, or you park your airplane and start browsing the classifieds for a Rotax. Ask around and you'll hear about the last independent in town. A guy who lost his shop after 40 years because he couldn't afford the software to track a $12 washer. He is not a statistic. He is the reason the gold-plated bolt metaphor lands so hard. The system is designed to squeeze every dollar out of the working pilot, and the FAA stands at the gate, collecting rent on a machine you already own. The tragedy isn't just in the invoice, it's in the empty hangars and the silence where a Lycoming used to roar. This isn't just inflation or bad luck, it's economic extinction, engineered by consolidation and enforced by a landlord who charges you for the privilege of turning a wrench. Rotax was not even a blip on the radar back when Lycoming was the only name that mattered. Now you walk the flight line at any EAA meet and see Rotax 912s gleaming under cowls that used to hide O320s. The numbers are not small anymore. 12% of the US experimental fleet ran Rotax in 2015. By 2025, that has jumped to 27%. The price tells the story. A brand new Rotax 921S runs about $21,000, with overhauls in the $6,000 to $8,000 range. Compare that to a $130,000 Reman, and you do not need a spreadsheet to see why folks are jumping ship. But there is no such thing as a free lunch in aviation. Dropping a Rotax into your old Cessna is not like swapping a starter on a tractor. You need an STC, a supplemental type certificate if you want to stay legal, and those are handed out like golden tickets. The paperwork alone can run $5,000 to $10,000, and that is before you touch a wrench. Parts are cheaper, but insurance companies get twitchy, and good luck convincing a bank your experimental 172 is worth anything at resale. The conversion itself is not just an engine swap. You are talking new mounts, plumbing, sometimes even a prop change. The bill can hit $30,000 to $45,000 before you are back in the air. For the pilot who just wants to keep flying, it is a practical escape route, but it is not perfect. The old promise of a working man's airplane, serviced in the field and trusted by generations, gets traded for a new kind of compromise. It is freedom, but with an asterisk. And every time a Lycoming gets pulled for a Rotax, another piece of that blue-collar legacy slips away. April 1st, 2026. 3 certified letters, each stamped and tracked, land in Lycoming's customer support inbox. The reply is as cold as the factory floor on a Sunday, an auto-generated no comment, signed by nobody, archived in the Freedom of Information Act log. May 12th, another letter. June 8th, a third. Each time, the same digital brush-off. The company that once bragged about one tool service now hides behind a firewall of silence, as if the price of a remanufactured engine is a state secret. The Federal Aviation Administration, for its part, answers only in riddles. An April 20th email to the Office of Aviation Safety comes back with a policy clarification that reads like it was written by a lawyer with a stopwatch. No names, no responsibility, just a paragraph about compliance with 14 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 21, and a reminder that every certified part must carry Form 8130-3 tag. A follow-up message on July 3rd hangs in the void, unreturned, like a wrench dropped in an empty hangar. Requests for comment go out to Continental Aerospace Technologies and Aircraft Spruce. Continental's press office responds with a single sentence: all pricing and certification policies are in accordance with current FAA regulations. Aircraft Spruce declines to comment, citing ongoing negotiations with suppliers. Zivco Aeronautics, the third leg of the market's tripod, never answers at all. Every outreach is logged, timestamps, email headers, certified mail receipts. The paper trail is real. The silence is louder. In an industry that once ran on a handshake and a shop manual, the only thing more expensive than a gold-plated bolt is an honest answer from the people who set the price. The blue-collar pilot is left holding the invoice, wondering if anyone in authority even remembers what a Lycoming sounds like at full power. Out here, a gold-plated bolt means the end of the road for blue-collar flight. Today, the FAA's paperwork stack feels more like sky-high rent than true safety. Aviation's legacy engines, once stamped by the thousands, now demand boutique prices no working pilot can meet. Economic extinction is not theory. It is a logbook entry waiting for its last annual. Tell me, how long before the Sky's subscription runs out for good? Drop your take in the comments.